ended up turning around and going back to that cabin.
Welcome to 10 Minute Travels. With me as always is Phil Freeman.
And with me as always is Shane Patrick. And today we're going to be talking to Emily Maxwell, Iditarod Musher.
Let's get right to it, shall we? I assume you have a game plan before you start the race. Like, if everything goes the way we've trained, we're going to do not just these mandatory rests, but these longer rests at these places. Did you find that how did your plan pan out?
The first year, I think I stuck pretty closely to it. Towards the end, and I'm talking maybe the last 3 or so days, kind of like once I hit the coast, actually, the first checkpoint is Unalakleet on the coast. And I remember pulling in there and I was talking about that emotional roller coaster. And I was just, for whatever reason, just totally at the bottom of that roller coaster. And I remember the vet going through my dogs and he's like, man, you're doing great with these guys. Their feet look awesome. They're keeping their weight on. They seem really happy, and it was good. But just for me mentally, I just felt really just bummed. And I ended up, more and more towards the end, I stayed longer and longer at checkpoints than I planned to. Because, it was my rookie year. I wasn't trying, and I'm running a second team from a kennel. I wasn't trying to be top 10 or anything like that. And I thought, well, I'll maintain kind of the position I'm in. But I want the dogs to be happy and I want me to be happy and to get like a little bit of rest if I can kind of, keep up where I'm at within that field, which I was able to. So yeah, I think the first few days, you can have a plan, but more often than not, I think most mushers would say the plan kind of is flexible.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a second team. Did you have don't show up before 10 days or something? Like, because they're the young dogs, to not push them, not have a career-ending injury?
No. That first year I really, I was running Nick Petit's second team, and he really, gave me a lot of flexibility about what I wanted to do. And the team that I was running, I'd been running them more or less as that group for 2 years, the winter before doing my qualifiers, and then that winter leading up to my first Iditarod, and I did a number of races then. So, I knew that team, and I think he knew that I read them and understood them and what they were capable of doing. There were definitely some points on the trail where he's like, don't rest here too long. Say before the Delzal Gorge, you don't want to rest 8 hours and have this super fresh team right before you're going to drop down the Delzal Gorge.
Be a little tired.
Yeah, a little tired is better. And then once you're done, you get into Roan, which is the following checkpoint, and kind of the craziness of the gorge is over. Stay there 6 or 8 hours, So he definitely had some pointers, and he'd done the race a number of times, so I was lucky to have that guidance. But no, overall, there was no and I understand what you mean. I think there are some people that dictate that about their second team for the second musher, that they don't want them to run, say, to the halfway point faster than such and such a time, or the finish, before. So.
It's a chess game.
Yeah. Well, and then it's all dictated, of course, by weather, and my first year there was a huge blizzard. It felt like it just snowed nonstop, actually, last year, my rookie year. And there was a point where the snow was so deep that I got stuck at a cabin. This is about 40 miles from Iditarod, which is the halfway point. I stopped there. I planned to rest there for about 4 hours. And two of my friends, who are much older, one was Jim Lanier, who's been running the Iditarod since the 70s. He was there. And then another friend, Scott Jansen, who's run the race close to 10 times now. And so they were both there, and we were all going to leave together. We all tried to leave as a group, and they went ahead of me because, I'm a rookie, and I'm just, you're learning from people around you. It was like, I'm going to go with them and see what they do. And we went out like a mile and the snow was just crazy and falling, and the dogs were kind of like, practically swimming in the snow, and the sleds like buried in it. And we ended up turning around, going back to that cabin. And I remember thinking to myself, like, man, our race is over. Like, we're never going to get out of here. And we ended up spending like 14 hours at that cabin. And that year, the way that race, every year the race ends up a little bit differently. But with that 14-hour break, basically, when I had pulled in there, the guy who ended up, who was ahead of me, he was just leaving. And after that, I was like at the front of that second pack with, these other people that were like right around me at that time. And so then we finally left, when we got to Iditarod, and it was like this big moment, because I never thought we were going to make it. And of course, the race is waiting and watching and seeing who's going to take off and what's going to happen with the trail, because the snow is so deep. But that was another reason too why I wasn't going to try to catch up to that second pack, because we had gotten so separated that, you just work with what you got. And that's the thing. You can't predict the weather. You can't predict,
what sort things. Obviously at that cabin, not obviously, I assume you didn't have good access to weather there, but along the checkpoints, do you have good access to forecast and stuff, or is it part of the race to not let you guys have that?
No, you can always, you might pull into a checkpoint and you're trying to decide whether or not you're going to stay there, and how long you're going to stay there. And I remember pulling into Nikolai that year, and it was snowing like crazy. And I remember I asked, as I was checking in, I said, how long is the snow supposed to last? And they said about 3 days. And I was like, okay, well, you don't, but you're not going to just keep going if the dogs need to rest, and,
Sure.
And so we stayed and we rested there. But there was also no point in staying longer and like waiting for it to quit snowing, because it's not going to.
3 days is out of the race.
Yeah. And you just have to, that's the thing. You also train your dogs to run through all different kinds of, if you get rain sometimes, it could have rained this year. It was so warm. We just didn't have that precipitation, but you teach them to run through deep snow, to run over glare ice, to run through mud, et cetera, whatever, you train for every condition.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Do you have, like when you're running down the river, do you have different styles of booties, or they're just all the same?
More or less, they're all the same. A lot of people, so your feet towards, don't they say you should go shoe shopping at the end of the day when your feet have expanded the most? Yeah.
Eat some salty food for lunch.
Yeah. So they say, the second half of the race to send out bigger booties because the dog's feet expand a little bit more.
Second half of the race.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And then, booties, different sizes, like their front feet tend to spread out a little more than their back feet. So you have smaller booties for the back. But yeah, as far as like trail conditions, we don't really send out different booties. For the most part, most people use the same material, which is Cordura 330, and that's a real tightly woven booty so that ice and whatever doesn't get in there. And if you were going over, say, rocks or something like that, you'd put 2 booties on, so you have that the base layer and then the second layer in case there's going to be,
rubbing or something.
Yeah. So to protect their feet. First year, honestly, it was so warm and so snowy, and certain conditions are right that you don't booty them, because the reason really for booting, one, is to protect their pads, say, from ice or rocks, but if you don't have that and you're on real soft snow, the only other reason to put booties on is to keep that snow from getting packed into the, in between the webbing on their feet.
Yep.
But sometimes the snow condition is right that it doesn't pack in there. It's just real soft and it falls right out. And it's nice to let their feet breathe sometimes. So sometimes on that trail, last year, it was kind of that warm, wet snow and it wouldn't pack in their feet. So we, leave booties off to give their feet just a chance to breathe.
You made me flash to one of those Formula One pit stops where you run around and take those booties off as quick as you possibly can, get back on that sled and go.
Yeah.
Do you make the drill sound while you're doing that?
Yeah. I'm my own pit crew.
That was Emily Maxwell. If you want to learn more about Emily or any of the other things we do at 10 Minute Travels, please check out 10minutetravels.com.
And we want to remind you to make sure that your sense of humor matches your sense of adventure.
And please like, subscribe, and share this podcast on all the platforms.